Spectral Lakes, Blackwater. Chapter 3. Blossoming Forth. The first date with Charlotte went exceptionally well. Then the next, and the next, and the next. Soon they were sitting beside one another in every shared class, eating breakfast together every day at Citron Cafe, arguing about whether the movies they saw were actually good, and helping one another with homework. Chris attended her ballet practices and watched her as she danced. She was graceful in all her movements, like a swan gliding across a lake, he thought. Chris would sit next to one of the mirror walls with his laptop open, his attention supposedly focused on his homework, but his eyes telling another story. While Charlotte's job was to teach kids the basics of dance, Chris ended up part-timing at Citron Cafe, and in his spare time, making music to post online. He set up a recording studio of sorts in his exceptionally small dorm closet, and played a guitar. When he showed some of his work to Charlotte, her eyes widened, and, at her eager suggestion, she ended up practicing to his songs. On Chris's birthday late in the fall, she gifted him a small blue ukulele. On Saturday evenings, they'd rent a boat and sail out into the middle of the lake, Chris softly strumming the instrument while Charlotte rested her head in his lap and hummed along, her fingers tracing abstract shapes in the water's surface. Sometimes she'd sing in French, songs like La Vie en Rose and Les Roses Blanches. For Chris, those moments seemed to stop time. Everything felt so right. Sometimes they would go to Crowgold National Park and hike the wild trails. One afternoon they climbed up Mount Faraday and took pictures at the edge of Redford Cliff, which overlooked the lake and, on its far shore, the entire town. "The mountain is named after my family, you know," Chris revealed with a smirk as he put away his photo-laden phone. "Bunch of our horses used to live on these slopes." "Oh," Charlotte cooed. She sat on the cliff's edge and gazed around the girth of the enormous mountain. "You have some real history with this place, huh?" Chris sat beside her. "Yeah. I bet there's like a horse graveyard up here or something. Some ghost mare is probably gonna haunt me for getting turned into glue." Charlotte rolled her eyes before resting her head on his shoulder. They both let the moment sit for a while. "So, what scares you?" Charlotte asked. Her fingers drummed against his thigh. "Where did that come from?" Chris took a swig from his water bottle. "I saw a bunch of old cheesy horror flicks at the movie rental place. Thought it would be fun to marathon them sometime. Now, reveal to me your secrets, Ancient One." She waved her hand before him in a mystical fashion. "Your wish is my command," Chris responded in a deep voice that ended up in a hacking cough. Can't say I've thought about it that often." "Not many people really want to know their deepest fears. Plus, it's hard to know unless you've experienced it. But it's interesting to think about, right?" "Are you a psychiatrist now?" Chris shook his head with a smile. "But yeah, you're right. I wonder if anyone really can fear anything unless they've experienced it. Like," he motioned to the cliff's edge, "I'm scared of falling off of the edge, but I've never actually fallen off of something and hurt myself, so I don't really know what it is I'm afraid of. Does that make sense?" "Yeah, now enough talk. Spill it." Chris took a deep breath. "All right. It's drowning." "Aha! So why is it that you swim in the lake just fine, Faraday?" Chris pushed a hand through his sweat-slick hair. "Calm down. I'll tell you the story." He adjusted himself and gazed out at the lake. Somehow, the water's fresh, calming scent reached them from the surface below. "So, one day my family and I went out to swim at the beach in Galveston. That's a city at the Gulf of Mexico. We set up the towels and umbrellas and everything before my siblings headed into the water. Mom and Dad stayed behind to watch Sarah and Walter, they were babies at the time, while my sister Katie and I were tasked with watching the others." "How old were you?" 12. "Ooh, that's a lot of responsibility for a kiddo." "That's how it is when you've got a lot of siblings. You have to step up, you know? Partially to help Mom," Chris shrugged, "and partially to get more allowance. You know, the important things in life." Charlotte nodded. "Oh, of course. I'm sure the action figures were worth it." "Hey, being able to buy Guild of Swordcraft on release was worth changing Walter's diaper." "A life-changing experience, I'm sure. Are you gonna keep sassing me, or am I gonna finish this story?" Charlotte smirked, her head on his shoulder. Oh, please, continue. I went out and swam in the waves, made sure to keep an eye out for Clara, the youngest. She was still getting the hang of resisting the waves' pull. It was a fun time. We all ran out with our bodyboards and had a blast. But then I saw a few teenage girls in bikinis on the shore. Charlotte could barely hold back her guffaws. Oh my God! What did you do? Chris sucked breath through his teeth, trying to bury his smile. I was 12, all right. I thought I was the peak of masculinity. What did you do, Chris? Well, first I tried bodyboarding, like, really impressively. Something that would catch their eyes. It didn't work. No shit. Kid brain, Charlotte, kid brain. When that failed, I walked up onto shore and leaned against the board like I was posing for an action movie or something. That didn't work either. It was time for my last resort. I walked up to them, fully prepared to recite, line for line, one of the pickup lines from a James Bond film I'd just seen. Charlotte had her hands over her face. But before I could embarrass myself to an unprecedented degree, I noticed that I couldn't see Clara anywhere. Not in the water, not on the beach. I panicked. Bad. I ran into the water and tried searching around for her. I asked Katie if she'd seen her, and she hadn't. Katie went to get Mom and Dad while I went farther out into the water. Charlotte's suppressed giggles had stopped. I kept feeling around in the waves and diving under with my goggles to try to see her. I got so far out in the water that there weren't many other kids around. In fact, I noticed that I was out much farther than I'd thought. I tried swimming back, but that made it worse. I was caught in a riptide. In my panic, I forgot what the signs on the beach said to do in that situation. I floundered around, trying to break away from the wave's force. I got out a few cries for help before a huge wave crashed over my head and sent me spiraling underwater. The sand whipped up into my eyes. I couldn't see anything. I didn't know which way was up. My lungs sucked in water, and my vision was going black. That's when I felt a small hand grab my own. In that heartbeat, I could tell it was Clara. All of a sudden, there was this feeling. It's hard to describe. I couldn't let us both drown. My body refused to. I oriented myself and finally broke through the surface of the water, coughing up all the crap I'd swallowed. I pulled Clara up after me. She was barely conscious. Katie and Dad were calling for us desperately. When they saw us, they practically dragged the lifeguard with them. I felt a rush of relief, but also, how to say this, a burning feeling. Every moment I was in the water, I felt like it would suck me back in and make me helpless again. I was crying pretty bad. He grinned suddenly, his face cracking. No hope of getting a girl anymore. Charlotte gave a small smile. So, Clara and I got medical attention and everything turned out okay. But after that, I had a phobia of deep water and the ocean for a long time. It was years until I was able to go into the deep end of the pool again. I was also a little overly protective of Clara. That's sweet. Oh, not the whole ordeal, I mean, but the way you took care of your sister, Charlotte said quickly. I didn't want to see her be hurt, especially not because I'd messed up. It was a bit of a wake-up call to what's really important, I guess. Your family? Yeah, and doing your best with the time you've got. Deep. You asked. Charlotte wove her fingers between his. That's the real reason you wanted to be an officer, isn't it? It's not just superhero cartoons and crime shows. You wanted to be able to take responsibility and help people. I guess so. Charlotte smiled. That's cute. I'm glad you find my hero backstory quaintly charming. Chris took another swig of water. If I didn't find you charming, I wouldn't be here, dumbass. Charlotte dangled her legs over the cliff's edge. Though, I gotta say, you're not so much the Prince Charming type as you are the goody-two-shoes Boy Scout type. That's good, right? I didn't get the Eagle Scout rank for nothing. He puffed out his chest, his jaw set. Oh my God, shut up! Charlotte playfully punched his arm. You see, I'm playing the long game. Someday, when we're middle-aged, you'll be a grizzled, hard-boiled cop with a coffee always in hand and the perfect amount of stubble on your chin. Not to mention the ever-present harsh noir shadows keeping your face angular. That's sexy. At least I know what you're into now. I finally have an ideal to live up to. And what do you want from me, eh? Should I become the classic femme fatale to match? Nah, you're fine as is. Whenever guys say that, they're lying. Fine. Chris paused. A little less sass would be nice. Charlotte stopped, her mouth open. Shit, I can't respond to that. Anything clever would just prove your point. Damn it. Glad to know I can take your breath away. Chris, stop it. That's dad joke level. We're not there yet. All right, all right. They sat there for just a little while longer, waiting for the cool spill of evening shadows before rising and heading back to the trail. There was a particular feeling in the pine-scented air. Chris could only describe it as the sensation of home. On the 1-year anniversary of Chris's arrival in Spectral Lakes, the couple attended the Spectral Lakes Fall Festival. It was a beautiful night, warm and balmy, and the festival lights flooded the trees. Carnival games, copious amounts of snacks, and local crafts filled the evening. At one point, the two of them stopped by a wood-carving booth operated by a friendly man coated in sawdust. He taught Chris the basics of carving, handing him a small knife and a block of wood marked with a bird's shape in pencil. He left Chris to do it and attended to the next customer. As his knife scraped against soft wood, Chris leaned back against the side of the booth. Charlotte, he could see, was watching his busy hands. He glanced to the next booth over. The owner of the local tourist shop, a beaming, wide-faced woman, was passing out flyers and free Lady of the Lake keychains to those who would listen to her sales spiel. Charlotte smirked and snaked her arm around Chris's elbow. Fun fact. That lady dated my dad in high school, you know. Her name's Veronica Shores. Really now? Yeah, apparently she was just as weird as she is today. Always talking her head off about business ideas and her 7 dogs. She's a good person, though. Helps out at the animal shelter a lot. Want to know another fun fact? Chris asked, his blade rasping against the slowly forming wooden bird. What would that be? Most cruise ships have morgues on them for the people who die on board. Sometimes super old couples will spend their savings on cruising until they die. Like, they think it's a good way to go out or something. Romantic. You really think so, or are you just pulling my leg? Nah, it's actually kinda neat. I'd rather they just throw my corpse overboard, though. I can bear being fish food. Circle of life and all that jazz. Charlotte twirled a finger in the air. I'd rather have my ashes be fertilizer for the oak tree in front of my family's house. I used to climb up it to hide from Katie. I'd keep a supply of snacks and books in the branches. Can't you also have your ashes be compressed into a diamond these days? That sounds cool. Maybe it could be put on a ring. Sounds like a morbid way of getting engaged to a ghost. Charlotte's eyes lit up. Oh, that reminds me. My turn for fact time again. So, I found out that there are these old legends about ghost investigators in this area. People who would go out and try to dissipate spirits, guide them to the afterlife, that kind of thing. Found out about it from one of Veronica's brochures. She glanced at the lady keychain hanging from her purse. Wonder if they gave up on exorcising the lady years ago. Creepy stuff. Damn it! Chris fumbled with the knife. Charlotte raised an eyebrow. What's wrong? Cut myself. He sucked on his index finger for a moment before examining it. I'm fine. Charlotte pulled a tissue from her purse and helped wrap the wound. Hey, your little bird is looking cute. She took it up in her hands. It was simple, but at least recognizable. Thanks. Maybe I'll keep this up. It's relaxing. Chris paused to look at his phone. It's late. We should head to the lakeside. Why? Well, I thought you might want to join in on the lakeside dance with me. Charlotte blinked. Isn't that a somewhat, formal event? She motioned to her skinny jeans and crop top. Not saying I'm never not the belle of the ball, but... Chris took off his backpack and unzipped it. He pulled out a folded suit and one of Charlotte's party dresses. He snapped a finger and gave what he hoped was a dashing smile. I'm always prepared. Charlotte pressed the dress against her chest. Chris, I gotta say, this is impressive. But at the same time, I want to hurt you for folding this and stuffing it in a backpack. Can that wait until after the dance? Charlotte tapped a finger against her chin. I guess. Chris adjusted his tie one final time and emerged from the men's room to find Charlotte decked out in a long evening gown. Defying the laws of time, she'd somehow already completely redone her makeup, and now looked as sharp and elegant as ever. Arm in arm, the two headed for the beach. The dance floor was already busy. Above, the low moon hung like a silver pendulum, and sweeping music by local swing musicians led the pair off their feet. They twirled along the gravel as if afloat on the writhing mist of the water's surface. The band began to play Two Sleepy People, and an old crooner in a peacock blue suit stepped up to the mic. The pair swayed, entwined in one another's arms. Charlotte nestled her head into Chris's shoulder. Around them, the dancers turned into colorful blurs. The yellow-white lights strung through the trees illuminated Charlotte's brown eyes. Chris really loved her. He loved her laugh, her eyes, the way her hair spilled down her back, her long legs and the way she moved, her vibrant personality, her everything. She turned her head to look up at him. His breath caught. They stood on the small boardwalk by the lake, the water lapping against the sides, the moon unreal, everything gentle. And Charlotte moved closer, her hand finding his cheek. As if gravity had suddenly taken a hold of them, their faces slowly drifted together, lips intertwining. Once they parted, their gazes met. Charlotte couldn't help but give a thrilled giggle, her fingers tightening around Chris's shoulder. He laughed in kind. I love you, Charlotte Ramsey, he breathed. God, I love you too, Christopher Faraday. To Chris's ears, those were the most beautiful words ever spoken. To be continued.